All right, let's go ahead and begin. So please begin your T-notes for water cycle, and just know that you do not need to draw the pictures or diagrams unless I tell you to. Okay, so we're doing the water cycle, and the water cycle is the cycle of water from land to the air and back. It is how water cycles through nature, and what makes this possible is the sun. Now, one of the parts is called evaporation. And notice that I number it number 1 on purpose. So please make sure you put number 1 and then the question, what is evaporation? Now, evaporation is when liquid water becomes water vapor. And we learned this when we learned about the states of matter. What causes this is the heat from the sun. And this heat makes the liquid water become more excited. The molecules become more excited and they become water vapor and they rise as gas. This is an example of the molecules of water being liquid and then moving out in one direction in order to be the state of gas. And you can see that here below, here on the lake, you could see the mist rising, and this is evaporation. Here is also other forms of evaporation that you've probably experienced or seen. And right here we have various pots or teapots boiling with water, and the steam is evaporation. And this is caused by heat. Heat making the molecules more excited and then releasing themselves into a different state of matter called gas. Whoops. Okay. Now, number 2 is transpiration. Transpiration is a new word for us, and it is similar to evaporation, except that liquid water exits from plants. They exit from the leaves of the plant as water vapor. So, for example, when you step outside from a pool and you put your wet foot on the cement or the ground, it will evaporate from the ground. Transpiration is when the plant releases the water from its leaves. Now, how is that possible? Leaves have holes, and these little holes are all over the leaf. Now, the reason, and this is what it looks like, they're called stomata. And these stomata are holes that they open and close, and you can see here that they are opened here and they are closed here. And why do they open and close? Well, this is how plants get their carbon dioxide in order to do photosynthesis, and this is also how they release the oxygen, which is their waste. Pretty cool. Now, notice that when it's open, everything's great. Things go in, things go out, okay? But when it's closed, you'll see that there's still a little bit of an opening, so it's not perfect, which means this is where water can escape as gas. Now, does the plant want this? No. So, that's just part of being a plant. You get to lose some water too. So, that is called transpiration. Here's another picture. Now remember, the sun is really warm, and just like we sit outside and we sweat when we're in the sun, the plants also sweat. And so it's called transpiration, but it's like evaporation, only that it comes from plants. So if it comes from a plant, it's called transpiration. And this releases a lot of water into the air. Number 3 is condensation. And we already know what condensation is. It's when things start to cool down. It's caused by a decrease in temperature. Water vapor goes high up in the atmosphere, and we know that as you get higher in altitude, things get colder, and they clump together with other water vapor molecules, and they form clouds. We already know this. So for a picture, here we have the cold water inside, and the air is warm. And so what happens is when the warm air hits the cold glass, the water that's in the air will turn back to liquid. And so that's why it looks like your glass is sweating. The water did not come from the inside of the glass. The water did not go outside. It's the water that's in the air that turns back to liquid because it hits a cold glass. Here are some real examples. Here is the actual glass showing that the water molecules in the air turned back to liquid on your glass, your cold glass of water. In everyone's house, you've probably seen this. In your windows, you'll see that it's got water on the inside of your window because the outside of the window is cold and your air is warm. And so the water in the air will hit the window and then turn back to liquid. Here's another example that says condensation. Number 4 is precipitation. Precipitation, we all know it. There's rain, there's hail, there's snow, there's sleet. It's when water vapor in the sky gets cold and they get together and they clump, and because they keep clumping together, they get heavier and heavier and gravity pulls on them. And that is when they fall down to the earth in some form, such as rain, hail, or snow. And these are some types of precipitation just to show you. This is the liquid, this is a solid, this is a solid liquid, and a solid. Number 5 is runoff. Now, the water cycle has runoff. Now, what is runoff? Runoff is water that travels on the land's surface until it empties into a body of water or it goes underground. Now, as you can see here in the mountains, when it snows, this snow will melt one day, right? So every spring, the sun will come out and melt the snow, and this snow will turn to liquid water. And this liquid water will travel in these little rivers, or sometimes they might go underground. And this is called runoff, when the water travels along the land. Here is an example of runoff. So in the mountains, when the snows melt, you get this. It's all the water that's melted running off of the mountain and just starting to travel down the land. Here's another example. Here you have some flooding, but this is water traveling along the land. It's called runoff. This is also runoff in the city, which you've seen a lot, especially when we get a lot of rain. So sometimes it can be from snow melting, other times it can be from rain, a lot of rain. And if we have a lot of rain, we have a lot of runoff. And if we have too much runoff, we have flooding. Here is another one where now you see that it's collecting in this area here, and this will travel to maybe a huge ocean or a lake. Number 6, percolation. Percolation is when water travels through the ground and goes to what we call a collection. Well, imagine that this is the earth and it rains on the earth. Where does the water go? Well, lots of the water goes across the land and runs across the land and run off, but a lot of it also returns into the earth and drips in through the particles, and that is called underground water. Okay, so that underground water, that process is called percolation, and it goes to something we call a collection. So as you can see here, the water will travel through the particles, the water will travel through the particles. There's many different kinds of particles, sizes of particles, shapes of particles, and gravity will pull the water until eventually you'll see that the groundwater flows to the lowest point. So gravity will pull it until it collects somewhere. For example, here, this is a stream or a river, or possibly, eventually, a lake. Now, that brings me to the next one, which is 7, a collection. That is what we call the place where water collects. Lakes, rivers, aquifers, any place where a lot of water goes. So whenever it rains, you'll notice that we have our own collection. We made our own little, what are they called, like drainage systems, where you'll see the water levels rise, and I think we have those running along the roads right next to our streets where we're driving our cars. Now, another collection is called groundwater. Now, groundwater is water that is located underground, and these are called, some examples are aquifers or wells. Now, here's a picture, and I'm not going to expect that you're going to memorize what an aquifer is or what a well is, but all you need to know is that aquifers and wells are groundwater, which means they're water that is underground. Pretty easy. right? And we know that some people, maybe out in the country, actually have one of these wells that they use in order to get the water that they live on, right? In order to take their showers or to bathe or to cook with, right? So this is an aquifer and a well. So this is groundwater. Now all these steps 1 through 8, this is what makes up the water cycle. Okay, so that's pretty much it. So please have your T-notes ready for the teacher to see when you come back to class, and hopefully you understand everything.